I watched Aquamarine expecting the most predictable 2000s teen romance imaginable, but halfway through it, I realized I had been watching the wrong movie. There's something oddly comforting about early 2000s movies. Everything looked brighter, summers felt endless, problems somehow seemed smaller, and if there was one thing those movies loved, it was a teen romance. You already knew how the story would go. There'd be a cute boy, a misunderstanding somewhere in the middle, a grand romantic gesture at the end, and everyone lived happily ever after. So when I came across Aquamarine, I thought I knew exactly what I was signing up for. A mermaid, a lifeguard, a summer crush, a perfect comfort movie for the evening. I couldn't have been more wrong. Not because the movie surprised me, because somewhere along the way, it quietly changed the question I thought it was asking. Let's quickly go over how the movie introduces itself. We meet Claire and Haley, two best friends spending the last week of summer together before Haley moves to Australia with her mom. Hanging over the entire movie is this bittersweet countdown. They only have a few days left before their lives change forever. Then there's Raymond, the local lifeguard, the town heartthrob, and the guy every teenage girl seems to have a crush on. Claire and Haley like him too, but one thing I immediately appreciated is that the movie never turns them against each other. They're not competing for Raymond. They're simply hoping that maybe one day he'll notice one of them. Then a storm rolls into town. The next morning, the girls discover something completely unexpected in Claire's swimming pool. A mermaid. An actual mermaid. Her name is Aquamarine. She's a runaway princess who escaped an arranged marriage because she wants to prove one thing to her father, that true love exists. She has exactly 3 days to do it. If she fails, she has to return home and marry the man her father chose for her. And, naturally, the perfect person to fall in love with turns out to be Raymond. The girls agree to help her, not entirely out of kindness though. Aquamarine can grant wishes, and Haley already knows exactly what she'd ask for. At this point, the movie feels incredibly familiar. The mermaid gets the guy. The girls learn an important lesson. Summer ends. Roll credits. You've already seen this story, or at least, that's exactly what the movie wants you to think. Once Aquamarine arrives on land and begins what can only be described as her 3-day hot girl summer mission, something unexpected happens. The movie becomes far more interested in Aquamarine herself than in the romance she's supposedly chasing. She's funny, dramatic, impulsive, and completely fascinated by the human world. Watching her discover life on land is honestly way more entertaining than watching her flirt with Raymond. And the movie keeps giving us these tiny details that have absolutely nothing to do with the love story, but somehow become the most memorable parts. Like the fact that a mermaid's nail polish changes color depending on her mood, or her shell phone, or the blue streaks in her hair. The whole movie is soaked in that unmistakable 2000s aesthetic, and Aquamarine somehow becomes the embodiment of it. She's technically a princess, but the second she reaches land, she turns into that one friend who's trying to speedrun being human. She doesn't understand social cues, she doesn't understand dating. She genuinely believes people fall in love after one kiss. And honestly, that's where all the chemistry is. Not between Aquamarine and Raymond, between Aquamarine and life itself. Because Raymond is surprisingly passive throughout the entire movie. He isn't chasing Aquamarine, he isn't driving the story, he's mostly just there. The movie tells us he's the goal, but it spends remarkably little time making us care about their relationship. Instead, it keeps pulling our attention back to Aquamarine herself. And that's the moment I started wondering, if Raymond is supposed to be the point, why does the movie seem so much more interested in everything else? This was the moment everything suddenly clicked for me. I kept asking myself why the romance felt so underdeveloped, why Raymond barely drove the story, why the movie seemed far more interested in friendship, family, and growing up than in the relationship it was supposedly building toward. And then I realized, nobody in this movie is actually learning how to fall in love. They're all learning how to love. Take Claire and Haley. At first, Claire believes losing Haley will be the end of her world. Haley, meanwhile, can't imagine leaving home and spends the entire movie trying to stop her mom from moving to Australia. And honestly, who could blame her? Until we learn that this move isn't just a random decision, it's her mom's dream, something she's been working toward for 10 years. Suddenly, the conflict changes completely. Haley isn't choosing between Australia and her best friend anymore. She's choosing between holding on and supporting someone she loves. Claire goes through something similar. She spends the entire movie terrified of change. Losing her parents already forced her world to become smaller, and now she's about to lose the one constant she has left. But by the end, something shifts. The wish she asks Aquamarine to grant isn't for Haley to stay. It's for a trip to Australia. For the first time, she stops trying to freeze her life exactly as it is and accepts that loving someone sometimes means letting them go. Then there's Leonard, and I genuinely think he's one of the most important characters in the entire movie. Everyone else wants something from Aquamarine. A wish, a boyfriend, proof that love exists. Leonard wants nothing. He helps because someone needs help. No reward, no conditions, no magical transaction. Ironically, the purest example of love in the entire movie comes from the one character almost nobody remembers. And then there's Aquamarine herself. She spends the entire movie convinced she's looking for true love. But is she? Because the more I watched her, the less it felt like Raymond was what she actually wanted. What she really experiences for the first time is freedom. For the first time, she gets to make her own choices. She gets to be messy, to make mistakes, to have friends, to discover a world outside the one her father built for her. Even one tiny detail suddenly stood out to me. Aquamarine already knew that if a mermaid dried off completely, she'd grow legs. So why had she never tried it before? Maybe because she never had a reason to, or maybe because, until now, she'd never imagined a life outside the one she was expected to live. Her arranged marriage wasn't the beginning of the problem. It was simply the moment she stopped accepting it, and that's why the ending suddenly feels so different. She doesn't stay on land with Raymond. She doesn't choose the fairy tale romance the movie seemed to promise at the beginning. She returns home, but this time, she returns as someone who's finally learned to make her own decisions. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Raymond was never the emotional center of this movie. He was simply the catalyst that pushed everyone else toward becoming a slightly more mature version of themselves. Because Aquamarine isn't really about finding the right person. It's about discovering what love actually looks like and realizing that romance is only one small part of it. So, was I wrong about Aquamarine? Yeah, just not in the way I expected. I thought I was watching another early 2000s movie about finding the perfect summer romance. Instead, I found a movie about growing up, about letting people go, about choosing your own life, about realizing that love isn't always romantic. And maybe that's why so many people remember this movie as a love story, because that's exactly what it pretends to be. It gives us the lifeguard, the kisses, the love triangle, the countdown, all the ingredients of a classic teen romance. But somehow, those aren't the moments that stay with you. The ones you remember are Claire and Haley on the beach, Haley finally understanding her mom, Leonard helping without asking for anything in return, Aquamarine choosing to go home, not because she has to, but because she's finally ready to. Raymond was never the destination. He was just the excuse that brought everyone together. And maybe that's why Aquamarine has aged so much better than I expected. Not because it's a great romance, but because it quietly reminds you that the most important kinds of love usually aren't the ones movies spend the most time talking about. Turns out, I wasn't watching a romance after all. I was watching a movie about learning how to love. If this video made you see Aquamarine a little differently, leaving a like really helps the channel. And if you'd like to stick around for more strange questions and familiar stories, consider subscribing. Sometimes the strangest part of a story isn't the fantasy. It's the things we never think to question. If you enjoy looking at familiar stories from slightly stranger angles, I'll see you in the next one.